All right, good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and get the Atlantic Herring Board started. First off, welcome to Beaufort and the ASMFC 81st annual meeting. A couple quick announcements before we get up and running with this board, and I'll probably make them again later today. But our federal partners from NOAA Fisheries have a travel ban, or they're transitioning to a new travel and budget software program, so they're unable to travel. So the NOAA Fisheries folks that participate on our boards and on our other committees will not be in attendance, and they'll be participating remotely. As you notice on your agenda, the chair of this board is Megan Ware, and I am not Megan Ware. I'm Bob Beal from ASMFC. Megan is coming down this evening, and she wasn't able to get down here last night. So she asked me to go ahead and chair this meeting just to make it simpler, and she doesn't have to do it virtually. So with that, I think those are the announcements we needed to make. And welcome to Beaufort. A number of folks will be around from North Carolina if you have questions on where to go, where to eat, where to fish, and all those important things. So with that, let's go ahead and get up and running. All right. First thing we need to do is approval of the agenda. Any changes or additions to the agenda? It's pretty straightforward. We've only got 30 minutes. Not seeing any hands. Anything online? I don't think we have any hands online. So the agenda stands approved. Any changes or additions to the proceedings from January of 2023? So it's been a while since this board's gotten together. All right, seeing none, those proceedings from January 2023 are approved by consent, and brings us to public comment. Any public in the room? There's not a lot of folks in the back here. Any public comments online? Are there any hands raised online? All right, no hands, no public comment here in the room. So we will keep moving forward. Agenda item number 4 is setting the quota periods for the 2024 Area 1A fishery. Caitlin's going to give a quick presentation on that and provide the background on that, and then we'll take action, final action at the board. Caitlin?
Thank you. So I'll just give a short overview of the quota period options for the 2024 Area 1A fishery. The quota period system was established by Amendment 3, and then board action for consideration today is to consider setting the quota periods for the 2024 Area 1A fishery. So per Amendment 3, quota periods shall be determined annually for Area 1A, and specifically the board can consider distributing the Area 1A sub-ACL using a bi-monthly, a trimester, or a seasonal quota period to meet the needs of the fishery. The board can also decide whether quota from January 1st through May 31st will be allocated to later in the fishing season. And finally, the board can specify if underages might be rolled over from one period to the next within the same year. So here on the screen are the 3 quota period options outlined in Amendment 3. And it's important to note that these allocation percentages are all fixed and they can only be modified through an addendum. So up on top of the screen is the bi-monthly quota period category, with quota allocated to 2-month periods throughout the year, and then 2 options for no landings prior to June 1st. The next option is in the bottom left, and that's the trimester quota period with 3 quota periods throughout the year. And finally, there's the seasonal quota category with 1 option for landings prior to June 1st and 1 option for no landings before June 1st. So for reference, here are the quota periods that were approved by the board in recent years. In 2019, the board allocated the 1A sub-ACL using the bi-monthly option with no landings prior to June 1st. And for the most recent 4 years, in 2020 through 2023, the board has allocated the Area 1A sub-ACL using the seasonal quota period with no landings prior to June 1st. So that is 72.8% allocated to June through September and 27.2% for October through December. And in all of these years, the board did allow underages in 1 quota period to be rolled into the next period. To wrap up, the board's action for today is to consider setting the quota periods for the 2024 Area 1A fishery from those options in Amendment 3. And for your reference, the Area 1A sub-ACL for 2024 is 5,546 metric tons. And I can take any questions.
Great, thanks, Caitlin. Any questions for Caitlin on the presentation and process and options available for allocation of the Area 1A quota? Seeing none, I think this board's been through this drill a number of times. Is there a motion for the allocation of the Area 1A quota? Jeff Caitlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I move that the board adopt the seasonal quota periods with no landings prior to June 1, the status quo option.
Jeff, we're gonna get that up on the screen, make sure it reflects what you're gonna say or what your intent was, and then I'll ask for a second. Jeff, does this reflect what your intent was? What's up on the screen now? Okay, if we'll.
Oh. That might not be working. Oh, I'm sorry. It's got to be read. Yeah, does that satisfy what Caitlin had on the screen for the status quo option with the 7% in the fourth quarter? I think that's it.
Okay, Jeff, I guess the other remaining part is whether the unused quota from one period can be rolled over into the subsequent period.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'd like to add that if that's possible. I don't have a second anyway.
Okay.
So,
We'll add that to the motion, and then I'll ask a second. I think
Thank
Melanie
you.
Griffin
Thank
has
you,
her
Mr. Chairman.
hand up online. All right, Jeff, are you satisfied with that?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
I had Ray Kane has his hand up. Are you looking to make a second, or you have a question?
I have a question on the wording. Are we implementing seasonal quotas, or are we maintaining seasonal quotas? I believe this is an FMP as it stands, so.
They have to be set annually, so each year you have to set a new quota period system.
Thank you.
Great. Is there a second for this motion? Steve Train, thank you. Any discussion on this motion? Doug Grau.
Just curious, do we need to specify the percentages between the seasonal quotas, or is it just say?
I think it's assumed.
That we will add that for clarity, Doug. So
Okay.
We'll get that added while we continue our discussion. I think Melanie is online and had her hand up. Can you, Melanie?
Hey, Bob. Yeah, if you can hear. Yeah, this is fine. I was ready to offer a motion very similar with all the percentages in this. So yeah, I appreciate this status quo. I think it's much like last year, should provide some stability and access in 1A, and what to anticipate across user groups as we're trying to continue to support stock rebuilding. So supportive of this motion. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Melanie. Other comments on this motion as we perfect it? All right, let's hang tight for a minute while staff perfects it, and then I'll call for a vote unless there's any other comments. Jeff, this is a little out of order with Robert's rules, but are you comfortable with the perfected motion that's up on the board? It just puts more detail on what your intent was, I believe.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, and the seconder is Steve Train shaking his head. Yes, I will read the motion into the record since I think it's been modified a couple times along the way, and then call for a vote. So move that the board implement seasonal quota for the 2024 Area 1A sub ACL seasonally, with 72.8% available from June through September and 27.2% allocated from October through December, with no landings prior to June 1 and underages to be rolled over into the next quota period for 2024. Motion by Mr. Kalin, second by Mr. Train. Is there any objection to this motion from the board? All right, seeing none, this motion stands approved by consent. And that brings us to our next agenda item, which is a report out from Dr. Cornane from the New England Fishery Management Council. Jamie, are you online and ready to roll?
Good morning, I am. Thank you.
Good. You sound good. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a brief update from the New England Fishery Management Council. So next slide, please. As many of you are aware, there was a inshore midwater trawl closure in place for about a year, and it was a roughly 12-mile buffer zone from Rhode Island to the US-Canada border with a little larger buffer off of Cape Cod, and it prohibited vessels from using, deploying, or fishing with midwater trawl gear within that restricted area. It was addressing concerns at the time by the Council of concentrated intense commercial fishing effort that would negatively impact other user groups that were dependent on herring as forage. It was in addition to the seasonal midwater trawl closure that is in place in Area 1A, and that runs June 1st to September 30th annually. That was vacated by the courts, and since that time, the Council has been discussing how to revisit this Amendment 8 inshore midwater trawl closure. And today, what I'm going to report on is what the Council has decided to do in its work to address the concerns about vacating that area, that management area. Next slide. Over a series of meetings that occurred in April and June, the Council developed what they refer to as a problem statement for a new action that they'll undertake. And the Council adopts the following problem statement, and the purpose of the action is to develop and implement management actions designed to attain optimum yield and improve the conservation status of Atlantic herring by accounting for its critically important role as a forage species in the ecosystem and minimizing user conflicts created by competing interests on the herring resource between the directed herring fishery and other important user groups, including commercial and recreational fisheries, whale watching, and tourism. The Council will explore a range of management alternatives to minimize user conflicts, including spatially and temporally explicit gear restrictions, area closures, and possession limits. The geographic scope of the potential management measures will consider but not be limited to the spatial extent of the midwater trawl restricted area approved by the Council in Amendment 8, with a particular focus on areas not already subject to seasonal closures to midwater trawling. Analysis conducted to support this action will also evaluate the changes in the incidental catch of shad and river herring that will likely result from measures adopted to reduce spatial and temporal user conflicts. This last point, the Council wanted to clarify that although it won't develop specific alternatives to address river herring and shad, the analysis conducted of any alternatives in this action will include an analysis of the impacts on river herring and shad. Next slide. Furthermore, the Council went on to say that it was modifying its priorities to develop this action and that it could include any gear types in the plan. Next slide. So recently at the September Council meeting, the Council had a series of motions to further articulate its plans for this action. It now is referred to Amendment 10. Amendment 10, we have a press release that we shared with the board. Hopefully you had a chance to look that over, and it covers these three motions the Council made in their September meeting. First was to clarify what this action is going to address, and it had been a priority on our list titled Revisit the Amendment 8 Inshore Midwater Trawl Closure. Based on the Council's discussion in June, it was clear that this was expanding beyond not only the footprint of the original area, but the gears that could be involved. And so now it's referred to as an action to minimize user conflicts related to the Atlantic herring fishery. The Council went on to specifically task the Herring Committee and the Plan Development Team to develop what they referred to as a scoping document and a schedule for public hearings. They would like to see this draft by the January 2024 Council meeting. They want an opportunity for in-person hearings and at least one virtual hearing, and these should be designed to solicit participation from all user groups that are interested in the Atlantic herring resource. They also went on to ask that we review and compile records from past discussions, including those that occurred in Amendment 8, and testimony we received on other Council actions as well. Lastly, the Council went a step further and designated this as Amendment 10, stating that it's to address spatial and temporal allocation and management of Atlantic herring at the management unit level. to minimize user conflicts, contribute to optimum yield, and support rebuilding of the resource. And so thank you for the opportunity to provide this update. If there are any questions, I can take them. Otherwise, you are more than welcome to email or call me if you have questions about the council's next steps. We'll be working over the next few months to prepare a draft schedule and draft scoping document in time for the council's January meeting.
Great, thanks, Jamie, for the update. One hand here in the room, Justin Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Cornane, for that presentation. I have a question. The revised problem statement here for Amendment 10 seems to have lost the language from the earlier problem statement related to assessing changes in incidental catch of shad and river herring that might result from any new management measures implemented. So was that intentional? Sort of, did the council in their discussions at the most recent meeting decide that that would not be part of Amendment 10 going forward?
Thank you for your question. To clarify, everything that you see in these motions, as well as the motions that took place in June on the problem statement stand, I think of maybe the last motion here on the screen as the council expressing what kind of action it would like to undertake in the public process in the second motion. But the third motion really speaks more to the scope. But the problem statement still stands. And with respect to river herring and shad, just to be very clear, council is not planning to develop specific measures in this action, Amendment 10, that would, for example, reduce impacts on river herring and shad. But what they are committed to doing is analyzing any impacts of the measures that they develop. And we look at that routinely with all of their actions, but they wanted to be clear with the public that that analysis will occur with this action.
Great, thanks. Any other questions in the room or online for Dr. Cornane? Seeing none, Jamie, thanks again for the update, and the board looks forward to more updates as the council works their way through Amendment 10. So if there's anything ASMSC can do to help with the council move through that process, please reach out and we'll help out. The next agenda item is the election of a vice chair. I think Melanie Griffin has a motion ready to go. Melanie?
I do. Thank you. Caitlin should have the text, but I would move to nominate Doug Grout as vice chair of the Atlantic Herring Board.
Excellent. Is there a second to the nomination of Doug Grout? Got Justin Davis. Dr. Davis, thank you. Is there any objection to electing Doug Grout as the vice chair, other than from Doug himself? That doesn't count. All right, not seeing any. Congratulations, Doug. You were the vice chair of the Herring Board. And that brings us to other business. Other business for the Atlantic Herring Board. Is there anything else that anyone needs to or wants to bring up at the end of this meeting? We've got a couple extra minutes. Not seeing any. I think we're done pretty quickly. So that ends the deliberations of the Atlantic Herring Board. We're going to start the Lobster Board right at 9:45, and we'll be ready to go. So, okay, we can even start a little early. We're going to start the Lobster Board at 9:35. How about that?